Vatican City, September 3rd, 2025, the heart of St. Peter's Square was alive once again with the rhythms of faith and tradition. Thousands of pilgrims, visitors and faithful filled the cobblestones, their eyes turned toward the man who has become a moral compass for millions around the globe, Pope Leo XIV. On this warm morning, during his weekly general audience, the pontiff's words rose above the rituals of greeting and blessing to deliver an urgent plea. The Pope called attention to a crisis unfolding far from Rome, but close to his heart, the ongoing humanitarian disaster in Sudan. The morning began with a scene of joy and familiarity. Pope Leo XIV, dressed in his white robes, was driven slowly across the square, reaching out to touch hands, bless children, and offer smiles to the faithful who lined the barriers. Several times he leaned toward children lifted up by their parents, pressing a hand to their heads or whispering quiet blessings. Cameras captured these tender moments, a reminder of the Pope's pastoral style, one rooted in human contact and warmth. Yet, the serene atmosphere was momentarily disrupted. Around mid-procession, a man attempted to climb the fences that separated the crowds from the papal route. Security officers swiftly intervened, restraining the individual before escorting him away. The Pope, seemingly unfazed, continued to greet the crowd, his focus fixed firmly on the mission of the day. Within minutes, calm was restored and St. Peter's Square once again echoed with songs, prayers and applause. But beyond the pageantry and unexpected disturbances, the heart of Pope Leo's address lay in a stark reminder of global suffering. Turning to the microphone, he shifted the world's attention thousands of miles away to Sudan, a country ravaged by conflict and displacement. His words were deliberate, his tone solemn, and his appeal deeply personal. Pope Leo XIV said, "I am closer than ever to the Sudanese people, in particular to families, children and displaced persons. I pray for all the victims. I make a heartfelt appeal to those responsible and to the international community to ensure humanitarian corridors and implement a coordinated response to stop this humanitarian catastrophe." The Pope's voice carried a mixture of compassion and urgency. He did not mince words. By framing the crisis in Sudan as a humanitarian catastrophe, he elevated the issue beyond politics, casting it instead as a moral and ethical challenge that demands immediate action. Observers noted that his call was more than symbolic. The Vatican has long positioned itself as a mediator in global crises, often emphasizing the plight of vulnerable populations caught in the crossfire of power struggles. Sudan's tragedy, marked by violence, famine and mass displacement, fits squarely within the pontiff's consistent defense of human dignity. By urging the creation of humanitarian corridors, Pope Leo XIV aligned himself with aid organizations that have struggled to reach besieged communities in Sudan. His insistence on a coordinated response was a direct appeal to the fractured international system, which has so far failed to halt the spiral of suffering. Those present in the square described a moment of silence that followed his statement. Pilgrims from around the world, many unfamiliar with the details of Sudan's crisis, stood still as the Pope's words settled over them. Some wept quietly, others prayed. It was a reminder of the power of the papal pulpit to turn global attention toward crises that might otherwise be neglected. As the address continued, the Pope returned to themes familiar in his audiences: the importance of compassion, the duty of nations to protect the vulnerable, and the universal call to peace. Yet it was clear that Sudan remained the focus. By placing it at the center of his remarks, Pope Leo XIV effectively issued a challenge not only to political leaders, but also to the global faithful to see beyond their immediate concerns and embrace the suffering of others as their own. The square itself reflected this blend of celebration and seriousness. Children waved small Vatican flags, choirs sang hymns, and pilgrims clutched rosaries as they prayed aloud. Yet conversations in the crowd quickly turned to Sudan. For some, the Pope's words provided the first real understanding of the crisis. For others, it was a call to action, a reminder that faith is inseparable from solidarity. Diplomatic observers in Rome were quick to interpret the Pope's statement as part of a larger effort to mobilize global opinion. While the Vatican has no armies or economic might, its moral influence can shape narratives and push governments to reconsider their positions. By publicly naming Sudan's suffering and calling for humanitarian corridors, Pope Leo XIV has placed pressure on both local authorities and international powers to move beyond rhetoric toward practical relief. What stood out most was not only the Pope's choice of words, but the humanity with which he delivered them. His reference to families, children, and displaced persons was not abstract. It was personal, almost pastoral, as though he was speaking directly to the Sudanese themselves rather than to a crowd thousands of kilometers away. That intimacy, many Vatican watchers noted, is part of what gives his appeals their weight. They are not the pronouncements of a distant leader, but the cries of a shepherd for his flock. As the general audience drew to a close, the Pope offered blessings, extended prayers for peace in troubled regions beyond Sudan, and departed the square. The faithful dispersed slowly, some lingering to discuss what they had just heard, others filing quietly out of Vatican City with solemn expressions. In the end, the morning at St. Peter's Square became more than a routine audience. It was a convergence of spectacle, disruption, and, most importantly, moral witness. Amid the cheers of children, the watchful eyes of security, and the solemn grandeur of the square, Pope Leo XIV reminded the world that faith cannot remain indifferent to suffering. His words on Sudan were not simply a reflection, they were a summons. And for those who listened closely, the message was clear. The crisis in Sudan demands attention, compassion, and action now.
Consegna due parole che racchiudono un mistero immenso, o nasconde la salvezza. Sono più che mai vicino alla popolazione sudanese, in particolare alle famiglie, ai bambini e agli sfollati. Prego per tutte le vittime. Rivolgo un appello accurato ai responsabili e alla comunità internazionale affinché siano garantiti corridoi umanitari e si attui una risposta coordinata per fermare questa catastrofe umanitaria.